I didn't love fashion apparel or cashmere, which is disappointing for some people. And the line I use all the time is if I had ended up at a coal mine in Mongolia and not with a group of goat herders, I'd be selling diamonds, not cashmere. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't specifically about the end product. It was about the process of engineering a solution.
Matt Scanlan, we're so excited to have you here today. You're the co-founder of Nadaam, a sustainable cashmere brand disrupting the luxury fashion industry. You're also an investor and an advisor. You're a strong believer in that purpose and profit can go together. So we're super excited to talk about that and more today. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you for
time.
Thanks for
coming.
having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to start with like what motivated you, or more like why did you feel so strongly about cashmere that you took out a loan against your parents' house? You transferred it to a Mongolian bank. You put the cash into 32 bags and drove it across the Gobi Desert to these cashmere herders.
So the answer is pretty existential
Yeah.
because one, I didn't love fashion apparel or cashmere, which is disappointing for some people. And the line I use all the time is if I had ended up at a coal mine in Mongolia and not with a group of goat herders, I'd be selling diamonds, not cashmere. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't specifically about the end product. It was about the process of engineering a solution that was really invigorating. Um, Looking back on it, if I knew everything I knew now, one, I would have never taken the risks I took because they were insane. I just was really naive and young and kind of didn't have any direction.
Yeah.
I was following like an internal drive from where I don't really know.
Say more though.
Well, I think that I was feeling out of place. I was feeling a little lost at that time, trying to land on something that I mean, this is like a really millennial trope, but like find purpose
Yeah.
and passion, which now that I'm like an older millennial, I'm kind of like, yeah, right. Like
Cynical about
just
it?
get a job and work hard. But um, I think I had come to the conclusion before any of this ever happened that the way my brain works and the path for me to be successful was going to be outside of the box other people were in. And I'd known that for a long time. I grew up with learning differences or whatever, and
Like what kind?
I all different letters. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember the specifics, but I do remember this at a young age. I did find it. I found the way public schools, for instance, dealt with this to not be great, and I have opinions on how I think it should be treated going forward. And certainly, if my kids um, have the opportunity to have learning differences, I feel like I could coach them a little bit differently
Totally.
than my parents. But regardless, I remember being really young, and I had a tutor who was helping me, diagnosing me, whatever. And she drew this picture, and she said, your brain is like a Ferrari. You're not stupid, but it's high powered. But this part here just doesn't work the way other people's does. And so you have to figure out how to make this engine work. And when you do, it'll be really high powered. Um, and so you're not like slow. You just learn differently. And so you need to figure this out.
Yeah, I love this so much. I am really interested in learning disabilities, ADHD. I read Dr. Hallowell's book. He talks about this. He's an expert in ADHD. And I think it's such a powerful reframing of it, right? To tell your child, you're actually really powerful.
Yeah.
You are
It's
a
just
Ferrari.
that it needs to
Yeah.
be focused in the right way so
Yeah.
that you can express that versus saying, you need something special, you're
Right.
not enough. And I think that makes a huge difference in the way your confidence develops, right?
The power of analysis obviously is meaningful. I'm 37. I remember what someone told me when I was 7 years old,
Right.
For
right? Like
sure.
Right.
I don't know if it changed my behavior in that moment, but it certainly, as things unfolded in my life, helped me reflect on them differently. And I remember when I started Nottam and started to realize, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Like things started to click
Yeah.
for me because I definitely did not know what my superpowers were. Like everybody has that, right? And now as a leader, business owner, you're constantly trying to unlock that for other people. But you kind of go out on your own to figure that as an entrepreneur. And I remember, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. And then I would look around and read about other entrepreneurs and start to connect the dots and go, oh, I always was. And I didn't I didn't know how to articulate that and I didn't define myself as that. But when you're a kid and you're trying to start your own business, which other people are like, what are you doing? And you just think you're a weirdo, or you leave a job and you're out trying to figure out how to start something new. There was no definition given to me. But I kind of came to that conclusion on my own. And certainly not being an A student, which I never was. I never graduated from anything. I mean, I went between different boarding schools until I graduated, was qualified kind of as a troublemaker, I suppose, but I think just bored and uninterested. Um, didn't graduate from any college, even though I spent 7 years in college, should have a doctorate. I don't even have a degree.
What was your major?
It was English,
English, yeah,
actually,
yeah. Wow.
which I love.
Uh-huh.
Love writing, love communicating, love telling stories, which is a lot of what I do now.
Yeah.
But again, as you mature and you've done stuff, you start to connect the dots of maybe why those things happen the way that they did.
Yeah.
And so the most refreshing part of being where I am today as an entrepreneur, having, built multiple companies, invested in many more, worked with many founders, is it kind of all adds up all of a sudden. You're
Yeah.
like, oh,
It
I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
We just interviewed Mickey Drexler, and he says this thing all the time about it's something that he actually got from Steve Jobs because he was close with him and on the board of Apple for a long time. But he says you can only connect dots backwards, never forwards.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think the ability to connect those dots is a form of self-reflection, which, again, I think all these things contribute to being a successful, or I don't know if I would call myself successful, but ongoing entrepreneur. I think you have to be able to look back and figure out how you got to where you are. Maybe it'll inform a strategy going forward. Oftentimes it does for me. But it kind of validates where I am. And sometimes you just need that. This is a kind of a funny anecdote or thought, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I don't remember well. That's just like a blanket statement. I don't think I have a strong memory. I can't tell you exactly where I was this time last week. I can't tell you what I was doing when I was a little kid. Some people will say, you remember this? And I'm like, oh, no, not really. And what I've come to the conclusion on is I'm actually never where I am. I'm always a few steps ahead.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
So I'm not listening, and I'm not trying to take in the current experience. I'm thinking about kind of 5-6 steps ahead from where we are right now.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of never present. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs experience that, where you get the thing you wanted and it's really not gratifying because you've been there in your head for so long, and by the time you get it, you're already ahead of that. And you talk to a normie and they're like, what? Why aren't you happy right now? You're like, well, this isn't enough.
Yeah.
I had this already.
Yeah.
So how do you, I can relate to that so well, but what is your solution for not experiencing supreme disappointment all the time?
Presence.
I don't have a great answer to that because I am disappointed.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I'm going through this large debt refinancing, which is exciting because it's going to be very healthy for the company long term.
This is for Nadaam, or
This is for
yes,
Nadaam.
okay.
And literally at the close, signing today, tomorrow, or something. But we've been working on it for 4 months, and we're here. I've spent all the money in my head. I'm on to the. I thought that by the time I would get it, it'd be like, yes, let's go out to a nice dinner. I'm going on vacation. I need a break. Doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now what do I have to do? And that's been basically the journey. And maybe other people don't experience it that way, but that's been my journey from the beginning.
How do you manage employees and people around you in that way? Because I think that can be frustrating for people too that are like, wait, we just worked so hard. Why can't we just celebrate? Because that's how a lot of society works. And how is there friction ever with people around
for sure.
you?
And it's different for everybody. I think the conclusion I've come to is everybody needs to be managed differently
Mhm.
because people are on, different sides of this. I am who I am. So I've also stopped trying to be a leader. I'm not. Stopped trying to be an entrepreneur. I'm not. I am what I am, and
Ooh,
so I think
I love that.
I'm up front. I think
Love
that's
that.
that's either a Popeye quote or it might be Moses or God or
Yeah.
something. It's one or the other.
One
We'll
of
take
those.
it.
think-
Either
One of
one,
those.
they're
think it
heroes.
is-
Love it.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's a Popeye quote. So, anyways,
Excellent.
I am what I am.
take it,
That's
yeah.
Popeye.
yeah.
So the solution for me is just being upfront with people.
Mhm.
It's just like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is how I operate. It's not beneficial for me to fake that or not do it this way for your benefit.
Mhm.
It's better for us to just be aligned, that I'm like this and you're like that. And not, because if you're not being genuine about that process of
Mhm.
managing people, I think I've seen that it doesn't really work very well.
Yeah.
So my solution is just to be upfront.
Well, and you were willing to take this like massive risk on starting Nadaam.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, what was the spark that you were like, yes, you in that moment? Like, what was that moment like? When did
Yeah.
it happen? And you were like, fuck, I'm gonna reinvent this model.
It was not clear what the model would be. A lot of our decision making was driven by a desire to help, to be honest with you. And I think it might come off as like that's kind of bullshit, but that was our motivating factor early
Yeah.
on. We were surrounded by a community of nomadic herders in a remote area of
How
Mongolia.
did you find yourself in Mongolia again? Like,
How much time do we have? Because it's a long story. I had left a job, was going to take time off to travel.
Mhm.
Where
And
were you working?
I was working at a firm in New York that was a blend of private equity, venture capital,
Mhm.
and was really out of place. Was really out of place and didn't really like the work. Just made me feel less than a lot of times. And I don't think it was because I wasn't successful. It was because I didn't like the box I was being put in. Also, I didn't find the work to be particularly motivating. So it was a handful of things, but I was still pretty young and figured I still had time to make a change. But I needed maybe like a break. And so I wanted to take a couple months off and travel around Asia, and had set up an itinerary to kind of backpack, but kind of see most of Asia, going from what became the first stop, Mongolia, and then going to Beijing and Shanghai, then down to Southeast Asia. And I had a whole trip planned, and made it to Mongolia and basically never left. We were
Cool.
offered a ride into the countryside for a day trip that turned out to be serious miscommunication, and we were taken on a day trip into the middle of nowhere and told, well, we're here, you can stay with us and you can hitchhike back if you want. But we were
You can hitchhike back if
love
you
it.
want. That's what they said.
Yeah, but by the way,
That
like
was also a time where you probably didn't have Google Maps yet.
I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have cell phone
Wow.
service, so I had
Wow.
nothing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's kind of common in
Yeah,
Mongolia.
yeah.
Like people go there
Like they
to
thought it was
explore.
normal,
Yeah.
but you were
They
like,
think it's normal, and it kind of is normal. Like people travel to Mongolia to backpack. It's a really
Yeah.
safe country
yeah,
with a lot of interesting things to see. So
Mhm.
that was the reason we were going. We just didn't really sign up for that.
yeah,
And so when we got to where we were and told we were going to stay there for a month, obviously our initial reaction was to be freaked out, but immediately we started trying to like settle in. And I'd had an experience while I was there that was very transformative. One day, maybe it was 2 weeks in, a little less than 2 weeks in, we're herding the goats. Said, take the goats out. And you don't really do anything. You kind of walk next to them as they go out to pasture. But I let that group of goats mix with another group of goats that wasn't theirs, and that's a problem. And I got yelled at. And it was in getting yelled at that I finally felt comfortable. And I've told this story before, but I didn't know what was going on most of the trip, right? When people don't speak the same language as you, believe in the same things, when nothing feels the same, it's really disorienting.
Mhm.
And I was starting to feel like I'm not with people. Like it's so alien to me
Mm.
that I felt like I was on another planet.
Yeah.
And you start to devalue the people you're around because you're not viewing them as equal to you all of a sudden. And you spend all your time going, well, they're like that and I'm like this. And it was only after this experience of getting yelled at that I had this revelation, so to speak, that when people are angry, they yell at you. So they're people. When people are sad, they cry. When people laugh, something's funny. Like, these are universalities, and anywhere you go in the whole world, people are going to act like that. That's the human condition in a way. And so it like rewired my brain into realizing needed to stop focusing on our differences
Wow.
and stop finding the things that made us the same. And when you flip that switch, life is more comfortable. You
That
can
is
be anywhere and be
gorgeous.
comfortable all of a
Yeah.
sudden. And I was young, hadn't really had these experiences being with people in other countries. Was pretty sheltered actually up until that point. And that moment felt like something I should share with people. And so everything we've done with Nadaam was to try and give that story, that experience meaning, and then try and translate that meaning into a set of values that could act as the pillars of a brand identity. That's why, when I say it could have been sweaters, it could have been diamonds, I don't care. To me, at that moment, it didn't matter what the output was, as long as the platform was big enough to be able to tell this story, because I felt that it was important for people to hear. I didn't think that what I was experiencing was so unique. I felt that anybody could have that experience. So everything we did from then on, this is a long-winded way of answering the question, but everything we did from then on was to try and justify that experience. And so we were driven in a way.
Big thanks to this episode's sponsor, Monarch & Co. Whether you're leading an established brand or building something from the ground up, you know how hard it is to do it all at once. Enter Monarch & Co. Monarch & Co. is a full-service marketing, e-commerce, and creative agency. Their founders come from in-house roles at brands like Supergoop, Nuuly, Nordstrom, bringing that real-world experience and insider understanding to every partnership. They operate like part of your team, adapting quickly, filling gaps seamlessly, and bringing senior-level strategic thinking to every detail. I worked with Monarch when I first started The Big Favorite, and I absolutely loved their hands-on approach to partnering with brands. They're a collective of more than 100 experts who plug in as your fractional team, bridging strategy and execution so you can scale smarter, no matter your size. Monarch works with brands at every stage, from emerging startups to Fortune 500 companies across beauty, apparel, CPG, wellness, and tech. Their expertise spans growth strategy, brand and performance marketing, lifecycle and CRM, e-commerce optimization, branding and creative, data analytics, and more. They really do it all. And this is fun. They're based in Philadelphia, like me, but have a global presence, partnering with brands all over the world. And just last week, their founders, Kristen Hogan and Rachel Smith, were named among Philadelphia Magazine's 150 most influential people. So if you're ready to scale smarter, visit monarchandco.com. That's MONARK and co.com.
Not to make money, not to like build the biggest e-commerce business or the best brand. That never occurred to me. It was to build a platform where I could continue to give that experience meaning.
Yeah.
For folks, I don't know if making cashmere sweaters is the best output for that experience, but here we are.
Here we are, but you have built quite a successful brand.
I'm proud of the brand we've built. Building any business and brand specifically, I think, is challenging.
Yeah.
I remember early on, someone told me, they were like, I saw a lot of advice, and I talked to some folks that would say, don't do this. It's really hard. And you never make any money. And then you talk to other people who say the complete opposite. And what I realized after the fact was the people who tell you the former were unsuccessful. The people who tell you the latter made a lot of money. And so it can go either way. I haven't exactly figured out how to, how to navigate the difference.
Yeah.
But it is hard building a brand. That's for sure. And I built Nadaam in a really unique time, in this like halo window of venture capital dollars getting dumped into the arbitrage that performance marketing could yield in terms of output for D2C e-commerce businesses. It turned out that a lot of that thesis didn't hold up the way we thought. And some of it you couldn't have figured out up front.
Right.
You didn't know because we didn't know how the industry was going to
Yeah.
evolve.
It's all contextual. Yeah.
I think a lot of investors, including myself, overlooked some of how this business actually works.
I'm so curious about that because I come from fashion, working in this business my whole life, and I'm curious about those details around that.
Yeah. How
Like,
does
can you
it actually
expand?
work?
Much simpler than you think.
Mm.
If you make something and buy inventory, then have to resell it, your business is boiled down to something extremely simple. It's a complicated cash flow file. You're putting lipstick on a cash flow file. I say that all the time. And so if you don't have a good handle of your cash flow, it's really hard. The exit velocity will never come. And I used to think, well, when this thing happens, then we've made it. And then when this thing happens, we're going to shoot to the moon. And it's just not how it works. Firstly, building a brand takes a long time. And there's no amount of money you can throw at building a brand because it takes time for people to care. They need to see you enough to have experienced the product, to have been around the brand, to see the name, to have people tell them it's great before it means anything to them. And it doesn't mean that they won't buy it. It just means it doesn't mean anything to them. And so there's no shortcut. I here to tell everybody there's no shortcut. You can't, doesn't exist. I don't think. I raised the money. I spent the money. It doesn't result in a shortcut. So you need to be up for the time it's going to take. You need to understand that it is a sophisticated cash flow file.
So do you think that piece there just boils down to margins simply and just having
1,000%.
the
Yeah.
margins on day one versus having them sometime down the road, maybe if you had a
Yeah.
certain scale, just
It's not just margin, but certainly if you don't have, in my opinion, in apparel, if you don't have an 80% gross margin, very hard to make money, like profit. Your marketing costs are variable basically forever. And it depends what you want to do. I could spend an extra $5 million this year, and I might make an extra $5 million. I might make an extra $7 million in revenue, but it doesn't mean that that's recreatable the next year. So the marketing expense, that line item, is variable. If you don't have the margin to absorb the ups and downs of marketing expenses over time, nothing you can do. You're going to lose money more often than not. It's also turns with your manufacturers. It's a cash flow business, right? So if you don't get to 120-day turns with your manufacturers, it's hard to cash flow the output required
that
to
also
pay your vendors
means
on time.
when you say it like that, and I generally agree with it, but that also means a lot of businesses shouldn't really exist because those
I think that's what we found
fundamentals aren't
Yeah.
there.
I think we found out that a lot of these brands didn't really deserve to exist. And what we'd underwritten was basically performance marketing arbitrage, but that's not a business model.
Right.
Furthermore, we overestimated the impact of e-commerce relative to consumer behavior. And so I think we thought that e-commerce was a business model. And in fact, what it turned out to be was a distribution channel.
Yes.
And those two things are very, very different.
Yeah.
Totally.
And if you spent all your money investing in performance marketing and brand awareness, and you didn't focus on building product strategy or relationships with vendors or brand values and identity or product differentiation or a hero product strategy, you didn't get the opportunity to explore the other channels that are necessary to actually run this business. Nadaam itself is pretty unique in that it's very seasonal.
Yeah.
The peak to trough working capital needs of a business like ours are really extreme, not indifferent than an outerwear business or other seasonal businesses, whether it's a ski brand or a swim brand. So it's not unique to the category, but we're on probably the further end of the spectrum. Figuring that out took time.
Yeah.
So we've been through all those ups and downs basically to figure it out.
So this is so top of mind right now, because Mickey always says like everything's on sale. And when you ask, especially Gen Z and younger millennials about their shopping behaviors, they can say, I want a red cashmere sweater, and they get online and they find it on ThredUp or Depop or somewhere. And I actually asked some recent graduates, then what's the point of new brands? And what's the point of brands, period? And they couldn't really answer me. And I'm curious, what do you think it takes for a brand today? Like, why does Nadaam deserve to exist? And what do you think it's going to take to solidify that brand into the minds of consumers for the rest of time for cashmere?
If I had the answer, I don't know. It's evolving for sure. I think the way I think about Nottingham, and I'll make it specific rather than talk about it more broadly first, but um, we know how to make a good product.
Yeah.
And I think our product is better than other brands because of how we built our supply chain and the time it took to perfect the rest of that supply chain. And that's not like a bullshit answer. I know it for a fact because I know it down to the raw material of our competitors. I know it down to the manufacturing that they use. For us, in a very unique sense, we have a lot of interest in the raw material and the process of making that product. And we've priced it to be really competitive for what it is. And so that's very differentiated. It is a differentiated product, in my opinion. Explaining the differentiation is the brand exercise because I can sit here and I could talk to you guys for an hour about the intricacies of making that product, but your eyes will glaze over and you won't care. And you're going to go, well, is it red or is it yellow? Like, I needed to be butter yellow this season. So it doesn't really
That's right.
matter.
Butter yellow.
in. Yeah.
Right? And so the question is, do you trust my brand to be the one to get you that butter yellow thing?
Yeah.
Trust is not something you get overnight. Think about anybody you really, really trust in your life.
Totally.
It takes time to build that trust. So then what do you have to do? You need to afford yourself time. And so endurance is really the test of a brand, not initially at least.
I love that.
You know, how quickly you grow. I thought it was.
Yeah.
I'm such an idiot for thinking that. But
Well, we all were. We all did
Yeah.
the same thing.
I thought how quickly I grow, how much money I raise, that those things were indicative of success. And it's not. It's actually endurance. How long can you do this for? Because the longer you can do it, the more trust you can build.
Yeah, the more
And the pathway to
stickiness.
selling your next thing is
Right.
cheaper.
Right.
Yes.
It costs less
Right.
to sell you the next thing. If you
Totally.
love Nottingham, when I'm the one that has the butter yellow sweater, they all look the same. They all look the same. Butter yellow is butter yellow. You'll buy it from me versus somebody else. So I don't think there's any shortcut for doing that. I think Nottingham's been navigating to that, but it's imperfect. It's not a linear progression. And the other thing is that I think in the consumer world, it never is linear.
So I'm curious when I hear you talk, it's all about long-term versus short-term gratification as building this business, right? It takes time and patience and doing it over and over again to develop a sticky relationship with customers. But then I'm also looking at these younger consumers today and their consumption of social media that's so fast foody and so
Yeah.
quick and
Cheap.
instant and cheap and let's get it on Temu. Like, can those two be reconciled?
I think that they are. I'll use an analogy of my own behavior that has nothing to do with apparel. When I'm really hungry, I scroll through like TikTok and Instagram and I look at food porn basically until I figure out what I want to eat. Right?
You're getting inspiration.
Love it.
Getting inspiration.
Mhm.
But I still cook at home.
Mm.
You know, like I still cook at home. So I think it serves I think the fast fashion trend, social media driven thing serves a place, but it doesn't supersede cooking at home, so to speak.
That's such an interesting take. I love that.
That's my own behavior.
Yeah.
And I generally assume I'm not a special person and that my behaviors are not unique. I don't think I ever do anything that anybody else wouldn't do because I'm pretty average in how I consume things and use social media and whatever. Maybe that's wrong, but I
I'm
hope
not
not
sure
because it's
that's
how I've done
true.
everything.
I want to know why you think people bet on you in the beginning.
I don't know. I
'Cause I
really
don't
had to
think
make
you're
them bet
normal.
on me. You know, I got told, and I've been told no thousands of times. Like, I spoke to every investor to raise money for Nottingham. I remember flying out to San Francisco on, back and forth on red eyes. Sometimes I would get back to the airport in New York and I'd see an email when I landed. They say, we'd like to see you tomorrow morning. And I would just stay, get the next flight and go back because I was so desperate to just
Wow.
get that dollar. And a
Wow.
lot of times it didn't work out. Um, relentlessness. I
Wow.
mean, I've raised money, debt or equity, every year
Mm.
that I've done this.
Mm.
Every single year that I've done this.
That would be 10 years, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
more that
Yeah.
I've been raising money for sure.
Wow.
I don't know why, but I never kind of quit that part of it. A lot of people didn't bet on me, I guess is the short answer. And I don't think they feel bad about it. I think that's just life. Um, but I think as a consumer, I'm a pretty average person.
Mm.
I'm not in general, like I'm not reading books all the time. I'm not really interested in like digging deep into crypto and AI. Like I'm not gonna spend my weekend, but you hear of those
Yeah.
entrepreneurs who are like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I
Yeah.
just like studied it for a year. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you studied it for a year? When I'm home, I want to like chill for a little bit. I'm gonna scroll on TikTok. I'm just a pretty average person
Uh-huh.
like that is kind of my point.
Uh-huh.
And so if I recognize I'm acting a certain way, certainly in response to these super powerful algorithms, I imagine other people, or at least a large percentage of people like me, are experiencing it the same way. And so I then try and translate that into our marketing or business behavior. That's not a special unlock. Most of the things we've been successful with are simple reactions to basic behavior.
Yeah.
As an
I love that.
example, when we launched the $75 sweater that now costs $98, but it got better over time. I really mean
Still
that.
a really
And
good
inflation
price.
also.
Still a really good price.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
That should be our marketing slogan. It's still a really good price. The justification was pretty simple. I couldn't afford the more expensive ones, and I didn't really understand why it was more expensive. And that's not because I didn't know everything about the product and the material, but just as a consumer, I looked at all these things and said, I don't understand why that's that price.
Yeah.
And so pricing it in a way that was easy to buy was a simple reaction to how other people were experiencing seeing the same sets of variables. So that strategy is essentially what I've applied to a lot of the strategic decision making around brand building, marketing, or product strategy, which are some of the things I've overseen for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So interesting. It's such an interesting insight because I do agree. I think some founders, myself included, they use themselves as the consumer model, but that's not really true, like broadly applicable.
Yeah.
Like, because, for example, I'm vegan, I started a vegan brand thinking that I can reach people with that. Meanwhile, 1% of the US population is vegan. So, like, it's not applicable to the majority of
Sure.
consumers. So it's interesting that you have that kind of insight about your own behaviors that are actually relevant for the company that you're trying to
It
build.
got me this far. I don't know if it's 100% right. It's my
Right.
justification for how I've made
Right.
decisions for a really long time, that the reconciliation that I'm not exceptional in most ways. Listen, there's things I know I'm good at, but at least as a consumer, I know I'm pretty average.
What are you really good at? Because you called yourself a right-brained CEO, and you said you're more creative, and that you went to school for English, and you love writing. And oftentimes and also you said earlier in the interview that you've had to let go of a lot of the things that you thought you had to be in order to accept your own exceptionalness, if that's even a word. So what are you good at, and where do you thrive?
Well, I'll start by saying that most of the mistakes I've made, and I've made every single mistake, like every single one I've made, and I keep making mistakes. But most of them were driven by ego.
Mm.
Thinking I could do more than I could, thinking I was better than I am, wanting something that satisfied something inside of me that was not specifically related to business, right? Or superseded what like good business logic would be. That's been my biggest problem. I think I'm moving past it because I also think that that's kind of a young man's game. Like you kind of get to a point where you realize what drove that. So to that end, I try and this is like really one of the values of Nadaam today. Humility is crucial. And I think humility is crucial for a couple of reasons. If I can't walk into a room like this one and understand that the two of you and everybody else in this room is better at something than I am, you are. Everyone in this room is much better at something than I'll ever be. And so recognizing that is crucial to foster in a business setting collaboration. Collaboration that leads to positive output. I try and instill that at the companies that I've overseen, that you need to approach things that way. And then I've not listened to it myself. But what am I good at? I don't know. I think I am good at crafting a story. I think I'm good at reading through something and then repurposing it so that other people can understand it the way I want them to understand it. And the I want them is the really critical point, because I could want you to understand it a different way. But so being able to take information and then retell it to other people in a way that I know that they'll hear it, but the way I want them to hear it, is how I've raised money. It's how I've told a brand story. It's how I've built a brand. It's how I've hired people. It's how I've garnered support from manufacturers or lenders. Probably how I got married. I mean, it's and other people can do that too. But that's something that I probably over index in to some degree.
Yeah.
I'll also say that can be bad, because at the center of that proposition is a form of manipulation
Right.
that I've learned to unwind a little bit. When there's no guardrails on that thesis, it can go wrong really quickly.
Interesting. Can you talk about where it went wrong?
Yeah, sure. I think
Let's get into it. Say more.
I think that there was an inflection point for Nadaam where we went from a standalone brand to a holdco, so to speak, or an attempted holdco. And
For the audience, holding company.
Yeah, sorry, holding
All
company
good.
around a thesis I believed in, which was that a lot of direct consumer brands needed some level of consolidation because we were carrying a lot of fixed operating expenses that could, in theory, or should be shared. I don't think I did the necessary diligence up front to understand how those shared operating expenses or functions should be run or invested in to be then shared out.
Interesting.
Nor was I capable at the time of assessing individual businesses' needs to then access that shared infrastructure. And the
Interesting.
rate at which I needed to do it, maybe it wasn't possible for me to do that diligence, but I didn't get to do as much of it as I wanted to. And so there was more kind of high level, like eyeballing of the strategy than actual like in-depth analysis to then yield the output. One of the big reconciliations, had I been able to do more diligence, been afforded the time to do it, and we could go into what afforded means in that instance, but I didn't have the time. But one of the realizations coming out of this was that the macro circumstances needed to be perfect to also execute that strategy. And the macro circumstances ended up changing on me, which happens in business all the time.
Yeah.
But I was over my skis and incapable of winding it back. I get over my skis now on some things. The market changes on me all the time. But when you're kind of within tolerance, you can then navigate back if you need to. There's a buffer. I did it without enough buffer based on that time factor. I feel like I'm speaking a little in tongues, but like
It's okay.
the problem was I could still
Yeah, I
sell
was gonna ask, like, what tripped you up? Like, what convinced you to dive in without the diligence needed?
Well, but first let me answer. I think the problem, though, related to my strength, was I could still tell the story of how it should work.
Yeah, totally. You had the vision for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though it was moving so quickly,
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly have had it all figured
And
out.
I mean, the model it's not a crazy thing at all. And private equity shops try to do it all the time. And some are successful and some are not because it's really hard to nail it. But in theory, it's something that totally makes sense. Shared resources across different brands.
It's a simple thesis
Yeah.
at the end of the day. I think there was novelty in terms of the category, what these businesses looked like at that time. and the rest of the market, it didn't really exist anywhere else.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I was selling here, and operating at a lower level. Like a lot of founders, operators, entrepreneurs, you tend to think it'll all end up coming together.
Mhm.
And it does sometimes,
Mhm.
right? Like the amount of times I've sold something I didn't have yet and then you figure it out.
Mhm.
I mean, that's very normal.
Mhm.
That's not a crazy concept for
Mhm.
building anything.
Mhm.
How many startups have built the rocket ship midair or the plane midair? That's a common trope. So, uh, but I realized that maybe I needed to rethink that a little bit because I'm the person that ended up dealing with it. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I benefited outright and nobody else benefited. Actually, I didn't benefit at all. I'm the one that had to clean it up.
Mhm.
So then I had to look inward and say, well, maybe I need to not do that as much
Mhm.
and kind of right size this experiment.
Mhm.
But to that end, it's all kind of a learning experience, and failure is not a requisite part of being an entrepreneur, but it's pretty common.
Mhm.
Um, it's pretty common, and that kind of thought process ties back to what we were talking about earlier, which when I became an entrepreneur, I started to connect all these dots and go, okay, that made sense, and that made sense. Well, certainly going through any form of failure or unexpected results leads you to look at the other experiences entrepreneurs have had, and you go, oh, well, this isn't so abnormal. It feels terrible right now, but it isn't crazy. It's just part of the process. Just get back on the horse, and that's where that resilience thing comes in handy. Is both the process that resilience is both how I've led the process of building Nada, but it's also what's kind of got us through challenging times, good times, whatever it might be.
And how do you think about, especially during that time, I guess you were overseeing multiple different businesses, really, and you today still you're involved as an investor and advisor in multiple
Yeah.
things and running your own business still. How do you think about that? Dividing your attention between different things. I feel like oftentimes leaders and CEOs have two perspectives on that. It's either be laser focused on one thing, or the more you're involved in different things, the more they will all help each other in some ways. Like where do you fall on that?
The latter is certainly my broad thought process, but the learning experience is that's not like an infinite equation.
Mhm.
And I didn't really know what that equation looked like for me personally. I thought you could multiply me probably times 100 times and I'd be just as valuable. And it wasn't the case. So I figured it out. I learned, okay, I actually can't divide myself successfully that many
Mhm.
times. And so today I'm much less divided than I used to be. I'm not actively doing a ton of investing. I work a
Mhm.
lot
Mhm.
with early stage founders in a very um, like uninvested format.
Mhm.
I'll talk to other founders all the time. I'll share my experience. I don't want anything in return, but I'll give you an hour here and there and tell you what I think of this thing if it's helpful to you. And if you
Mhm.
don't want it, then that's cool too.
Mhm.
Um, but I still do a lot of that because it's validating in a way
Mhm.
and enjoyable. Most of my time and attention right now is really focused on Nottingham, primarily because Nottingham had to go through some. I think restructuring is the wrong word, but changes over the
Mhm.
past 2 years to recalibrate what success needed to look like for a business like ours. Um, for us and like a lot of direct consumer brands, it was pivoting into extreme profitability as quickly as you could. And we made that transition in 18 months.
Mhm.
It's the best thing I've ever done. It was the most fulfilling thing I ever did was r- reconciling EBITDA in a really meaningful, thoughtful way that
Mhm.
led to cash flow improvements, that led to better
Mhm.
debt facilities, less reliance on equity, things like that. And I'm still figuring it out, but I'm really hyper focused on that now on a
Yeah.
daily basis. I get pulled between doing that work and then branding, marketing work, and so
Mhm.
in that way, I'm still spread across multiple areas, but I'm not spread outside of what I need
Mhm.
to be focused on. I need to be focused on this, and that might not always be the case,
Yeah.
Right.
but today it definitely feels like that.
Can you share? I'm sorry, this is so
Yeah.
tactical, but I'm just
No,
curious. When
no,
you just
please.
talked about, optimizing your EBITDA for the business, was a lot of that around running the company more efficiently, or was it about potentially slowing down growth to a level? Probably both of it, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious if you can share a little
So
more.
essentially, you look at all of your major cost centers. For a business like ours, we have 3 or 4 major cost centers. You have payroll, you have marketing, you have COGS, and then you have G&A, which incorporates a lot of stuff. Um, COGS, if they're too high, that's the gross margin thing. It's unrecoverable. So figure that out first. Then you go to payroll. And that was the toughest part for me because I'd been hiring for a really long time. I'm not a good firer. I don't like firing people. I'm maybe too empathetic. I don't like that feeling. I try not to put myself in that position, but I had to do a lot of it. Like a lot. Um, and that required me to basically like pull my empathetic brain out for a second and just think about, what had to happen, the numbers that needed to make sense. So you reconcile those cost centers for where you think revenue can fall to make sense. And then you got to let revenue fall. Some of that's going to happen naturally. And then it's also going to happen over several stages because if I pull a big chunk of my performance marketing out, certainly lower funnel acquisition is going to fall off. I know that. But returning customers might stay at a certain level. But all of a sudden, if you're going to keep your retention marketing and your performance marketing down, then all of a sudden those returning customers are not coming back at the rate that you thought they were because you weren't really attributing how much money was going to reacquire an existing customer. And so it happens in multiple seasons and multiple stages where you go, oh, this is really where the bottom is. And you need to make sure that your cost centers are flexible enough to then come down with you, or you've left some buffer there. So you don't make your biggest cuts first. You do it in several steps. Because if you cut your cost centers too far, it might not be recoverable. If you let your revenue fall too far to find that bottom too quickly, that also might not be recoverable. And so you have to, I don't know if this is a good term, but you have to like bloodlet a little bit, right? You have to let the steam out. And I didn't know how long that process was going to take. And so, I thought it could happen a little bit faster than it probably did. But the important thing out of all of that is that you recognize when it's reached the right equilibrium, because then you need to start pushing again. You need to start pushing your revenue back to the right place so that that EBITDA grows to a certain level that's healthy for the business, that gets you back on the right cash flow if you're going to do it without equity.
How did you learn this, considering this is the first time?
Can I just say something? I
Yeah.
love hearing you talk about this because you are so engaged in like this
Doing
dance.
it right this second.
Yeah,
It's
but
so
it's
real for
but
me.
but I want the listeners to hear that from you because like that's I think what makes you so good at what you do is that you love doing this. Like to hear you talk
Yeah.
about this, it's like yeah, it's inspiring. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I just wanted to like make that
I don't
point.
think I'm like a restructuring guy at the end of the day, but I've enjoyed learning something I didn't get to learn before.
Yeah.
Back to this earlier conversation, I don't learn in a traditional sense.
Yeah.
If you told me, Matt, this is how you have to do it, I'm not going to remember when I walk out of the room.
Yeah.
I'm just not. Like,
Yeah.
I have to go do it
You have to
myself.
do it.
Right.
I only learn by doing. I also only figure things out by talking them out loud.
Oh, interesting.
I think while I talk.
Interesting.
So I can't just like sit down and be like, just think of this answer. I actually have to say it all out loud
Huh.
to get it to a place where it makes sense for me. But the same thing goes for, creating a solution. I have to test it and work it through.
Yeah.
But I think I have a pretty good ability to communicate what's
Yeah.
happening
Mhm.
in real time
Mhm.
so that people can kind of stick with you.
Mhm.
If you can't do that,
It's a
then
gift.
everything I just mentioned is totally unsustainable for other people.
Yeah.
If I can explain to you what I just said, who's going to be part of that?
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're next on the list to get fired. You don't know if revenue is going to fall so much that I don't catch it on time and all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore and it's all over.
Totally.
And so the thing I've really had to deploy a lot over the past couple of years is really transparent communication.
Yeah.
There's no bullshit allowed in that communication. It's got to be very straightforward, but clear and easy for most people to understand. What I've also come to the conclusion on is nobody knows everything I know. And if I don't lay it out really simply for them, they'll never add it all up themselves. And so I do a lot of that. I have a town hall today. I'm on the verge of closing a big debt refinancing. And that debt refinancing is taking a month and a half longer than it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So not everything's perfect today.
Mhm.
I have to go into town hall and I have to communicate this as clearly as possible so that everyone goes, yeah, cool, got it, thank you, we're here,
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah.
That's been a pretty interesting exercise overall. I think it's been more rewarding. I feel like a real business person. Raising money, building a brand, investing in brand awareness is fun, but it's not real business.
Mhm.
My father-in-law is he runs a chemical manufacturing conglomerate out of the Midwest, and he's been doing
No
it for
way.
45 years. He didn't go to college. He did it right out of high school,
Wow.
brick by brick. He bought properties. He brought a new partner on board. He scaled that. It's A to B, or 1+1 is 2. Always so simple, but the results are incredible.
Mhm.
And I remember when I met my now wife and I got to know my father-in-law, we would talk about business and he'd talk about his business and I talk about mine, and I would leave feeling like, man, I'm so full of shit. Like, what I do is not real. What you do is real. Like, the 1+1 always equals 2.
Mhm.
When 1+1 equals 4,
Mhm.
but that's like good, but it's not real.
Mhm.
And so I think this exercise has been really validating and interesting because it is always 1+1 equals 2.
Mhm.
It's real business.
Mhm.
When you make money and you're profitable and your cash flow works, that's real.
That's
Yes.
totally the
If you
foundation.
only make your cash flow work because you raised money,
Yeah, then
your business isn't real.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Subsidized.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's subsidized.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's been the interesting part. But there's a lot about this I don't like. I don't like. Yeah, there's a lot of mixed emotions throughout that process, I will say, that are challenging to always put in the right place. And I'd be lying if I said this was easy.
Yeah.
There've been moments throughout my entire journey of being an entrepreneur. I'm a very open person, as I'm sure you guys could tell, for the most part, but like, there's been extremely painful, very stressful, very hard, and you can't share that with anybody. You rarely can even share it with your significant other because no one's going to understand it. No one's going to have to get in the driver's seat but you. And so you do it a lot on your own.
Mm.
You see it all and you choose what to give other people to motivate them to help you. But it's a pretty lonely experience,
Yeah.
I would say. And I would prefer not to have that again
Yeah.
if I
Right.
could help it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you get very stressed about this type of stuff? Or does it invigorate you more? Because it's, in many ways, it's a puzzle, a constant puzzle,
Yeah.
finding the pieces, which has something incredibly satisfying intellectually, emotionally, but it's also existential. It's also people on your payroll. It's also, like you just said, if I don't figure it out in time, something really bad could happen. Like, how often do you get really stressed out and overwhelmed? Like, what is the, yeah.
Less than I used to because I've seen so
right.
much now. Like, if I just gave you an example of one thing I did today, you might be like, holy shit, how are you here right now? Like, are you okay? But to me, it's like, yeah, I figured that out like 15 times already. So I'll figure it out. Like, it's going to come together. So it's just the benefit of experience that helps me manage it. There were things early on that, yeah, really were very stressful. They felt existential. Not everything is existential. The way things feel, I've also come to the conclusion, is not always reality. Being cold and being hot is a feeling. It doesn't mean you're going to be hot and cold forever, but you know that. Right? And sometimes you just don't know because you've never felt that feeling before. If all of a sudden it got 1,000,000 degrees in here and we'd never felt that temperature before, we'd be like, oh my God, this is how it's going to be forever. You just don't know
Do you
that
have
it'll
tools
pass.
now to self-reflect on that when you're in the situation? Like, do you catch yourself, or is it always in hindsight? Oh yeah, okay, this is another learning.
Yeah, no, I don't think I always catch it. I think sometimes it definitely gets me. But tell you what, the really helpful thing is being able to just talk it out loud in a safe place. To be able to reflect on it out loud and go, okay, well, that didn't kill me, so I'm still here. And yeah, I don't think that there's a better way of doing it. I haven't found a better way of doing it. I haven't learned everything I need to learn yet. It's still definitely a learning experience. There's been so, like, in the past 2 years, a lot of the things I always wanted to happen for Nottingham happened. Like the right PR placement, being on the right, you know, being on the Today Show or something,
Was
or
that like, is there like one moment that you feel was like the coolest ever?
no, is my
No,
point,
no.
which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
nothing feels like the coolest ever
Yeah.
anymore.
We
Like the
talked
things
about
I
that.
always
Full
wanted, I
circle.
actually got now,
Mhm.
and it's like okay,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, and I think this is the fallacy. If you're chasing that feeling, I don't think it's ever going to be externally provided for you. I think it's very internal. And I like the most fulfilling things for me never happened at work. By far, the most fulfilling thing in my entire life was when my wife and we had our daughter. Like not even close. Like doesn't even touch on anything that's ever happened. And so that perspective is really key all of a sudden because I actually don't need this is like part of evolving as an entrepreneur and having all these experiences. I actually don't need to chase those things like I used to,
Yeah.
thinking that they're going to give me this level of gratification that I somehow didn't already have because I now know where it can come from in a way that's so much more powerful
Yeah.
and meaningful to me
Yeah.
that it's changed my relationship to like that like addiction,
Yeah.
right? Because it is
Yeah.
an addiction. When
Yeah.
you're doing it at work, it's an addiction.
Yeah.
Like I'm chasing that feeling and it lasts this long, lasts this long. It's not, doesn't fulfill me at all.
Can you identify that in other founders, like especially with your mentoring and your being a general partner and investing? Like, can you see some of those red flags in people now in hindsight?
Yeah, for sure. But I think the thing
And do you call bullshit on them too sometimes?
I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty honest with people,
Yeah.
but I try not to overstep because I've never listened to anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never taken advice from anybody. I don't care. If
Yeah.
Steve Jobs walked in this room, I wouldn't listen to him. Mickey Drexler was one of my heroes, and I met him, and we talked, and it didn't help me.
Uh-huh.
And it's not because he's not great or super
Yeah,
smart.
yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
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 So I'm very cautious
Yeah.
that I know that likely most of what I'm saying is to hear myself speak because it's really up to that person in terms of what they're willing to hear about their
Yeah.
process. And if they're like me, then probably not much of it. Maybe they just need someone to talk it out loud and I don't tell them they're an idiot and that's enough.
I also don't think it's binary. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
that having those qualities are necessarily a problem that needs to be fixed or solved or that you shouldn't be like that. I do think with that whole need for constant gratification and a dopamine hit, there's also a lot of success that comes with that. I think the key is to understand when it's necessary and when it's not necessary. I mean, personally, I find like that is the big question is like,
Yeah.
when do I need to
Yeah.
put this on, this like superpower? And when is it hindering my or other people's well-being?
Yeah,
And I
well-
think that is the key. And there's so
Knowing
much
the
nuance in
difference.
there.
What you're getting at is alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
It's a constant process
Totally.
of figuring out what the difference is
Mhm.
or knowing the difference. And it's not a pattern I've actually recognized particularly well. Because all these circumstances look different. So, maybe some experience will give you the ability to pause and think, but I have not found that the experience leads me to the right answer every time.
Right.
To say, oh, I, need to do something here. I don't need to do something here.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, so, yeah, there's some benefits of kind of doing all the stuff I've done, but it very much feels like it's still a learning process for me. But again, the most eye-opening of them all was on the personal side, which is just very funny,
Yeah.
because if you met me 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't even on my radar. Just felt like another
Yeah.
task. And now that I'm on the other side of it, not like I can't believe I used to think like that, like a crazy person. The one thing that is, as a founder, operator, entrepreneur, something I'm still struggle to navigate. It's how to manage your own central nervous system, which is painful. It's the most painful part, right? Like I am always like my blood pressure sucks. Like, I am always right up here. And there are very few opportunities to reset my central nervous system. But the longer I go, the clearer it becomes to me that I'm going to have to invest in an experience that helps me reset a little bit, to figure out, how to navigate whatever's next.
Yeah. Because there's a whole life left. So
I know. You're only 37. I'm like,
exactly.
so young.
Technically 36, but
technically
Only
36. Happy
36.
birthday.
thanks.
Amazing. Well, we're coming up to an hour, and I think we could talk forever.
I know. I
but
have so many more questions, and actually, maybe I'll ask you offline. But yeah.
Ask me anything.
Yeah.
So, do you want to ask one more question?
No,
and then we do the
no.
rapid?
Let's do the rapid
We'll
fire,
do the
yeah.
rapid fire questions, and then we'll have some more questions offline.
Cool.
So, what would you say is your life's purpose, and how does it align with your business?
Being a father, it doesn't align with my business, and that's good. That's
It's
all
awesome.
I care about.
Love it. It's amazing.
What is your definition of success, and why?
I actually don't know anymore what my definition of success is.
That's totally
I
okay.
think right now, and it will change, I promise you, the definition of success for me is feeling complete most of the time.
Mm.
Feeling complete most of the time. That, like, I don't need another thing attached to me
Mhm.
to feel better about where I am
Mhm.
or myself
Mhm.
or anything. And again, I think that can really only come with experience and
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
And then, are there any things that you love to listen to or read, or that you're reading right
It sounds like
now?
you're more of a listener than a reader.
listener,
Is that right?
exactly.
I am a loser.
Movies.
I look at TikTok. I do. I mean,
TikTok,
I
right?
know.
Any TikTok
Okay, but TikTok creators, like,
creators that we should follow. Food related, preferably.
This is my point. I am not that interesting. When I am hanging out, I watch the reality shows my wife likes to watch.
Which ones
Which
are?
are?
I do like Summer House, and I
Okay,
do like
I don't know
Southern
what that
Charm.
I don't know what that is.
They're two of her favorites.
Is she from the South? Is that why she likes Southern
No,
Charm?
she's
Okay.
from the Midwest.
Oh, interesting.
And I'll take an hour a day and I just zone out on TikTok. I get my news. I don't read like business books. They drive me crazy. When I read
Yeah.
a business book, I'm like, like
I feel the
one,
same
I
way
don't
now.
need, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
Right? Goes back to I'm not willing to take anybody else's advice. So
Right.
self-help books or business books are not interesting to me. I like I'll read fiction when I have the time, when I can focus,
Yeah.
which requires a vacation, which I rarely get.
Mhm.
Once every couple of years, I get a vacation where I can read a book.
Wow.
So I don't have a great answer on that.
What's the most unhinged rabbit hole you've seen on TikTok? And that'll be the end question. And that you've been interested in. Go.
Love alien conspiracy theories.
Ow! Oh no!
I-
Stop it.
I love
We should
them.
have asked that
Then
question at
you
the beginning.
are
You are in
gonna
the right.
love my private TikTok, which
I-
I'm totally cutting out of the end of this. But fuck yeah.
I
Okay.
love it. I go down conspiracy rabbit
Have you read?
holes.
Of course, you haven't read it. Have you listened to American Cosmic?
No, what is it?
Matt, we got
We'll
lots
send
to
you a
talk about.
copy.
I go
We got
down
a lot to
all
talk
the
about.
all the alien conspiracy theory rabbit holes, and I have my own theory.
That will be the next episode.
Literally, this couldn't have been the most perfect ending to this podcast. Thank you, Matt.
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
here.
Welcome. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for watching or listening today. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow along on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And even leave us a comment if you feel compelled. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to bring it forth into a future show. Thank you so much.